So let's take a moment and center ourselves in. We're already in our heart. We're in that heart space. And Mother, Father, God, we're so grateful for all the ways that you speak to us. And we know that our goal here is to hear you from within, to hear that Christ presence so that all we hear, all we see reminds us of your goodness in ourselves and in our world. And so it is. Amen. Okay. Well, good to see you all today. We're going to continue to focus on abundance as we have been in August. And so today we're going to be talking about live from the surface or live from the source. It's our choice. So let's align ourselves with this statement of truth. And we know we affirm not to make things true, but because they are true. So let's align with this together. Here we go. God is my source, and on that abundant, unfailing supply, I fully rely. Okay, we got the rhyme part in there, right? Okay, so let's affirm it again. Here we go. God is my source, and on that unfailing, I goofed it up, supply, I fully rely. All right, and we open ourselves, and let's align with it the third time. Here we go to kind of get it in our consciousness. God is my source, and on that abundant, unfailing supply, I fully rely. Okay, how about that? Do you fully rely on God as your source? I try. I do more than I used to. But it's a matter of learning, isn't it? And that's okay. It's a matter of learning and practice one day at a time and facing all those spots where it feels like, oh, I don't think so. And then bringing it back. And that's okay. That's what it's about, is being in that divine human and learning and growing. So, I got a little story for you. There was a man who was a retired auto mechanic, and this was one of his favorite stories about his adventures in the world of auto mechanics. He said that one day the service manager came to him, and somebody brought a car in, and the service manager gave him the problem, the sheet with the problem on it, and he said this customer is just distressed. They're just really upset. They're worried that this is going to cost them a whole lot of money. They said every time they turn, there's this really loud noise that happens every time they turn the car, and so I'm giving it to you to diagnose it. So the mechanic takes it out for a test drive to see if he can hear, what's going on. So sure enough, he turns the car to the right, and there's this huge thudding sound. He turns the car to the left, and there's this huge thudding sound. So he brings the car back into the lot, and he opens the trunk. And then he has diagnosed the problem now, so he gives the service order back to the service manager, and he says, here's the diagnosis, and here's the solution. He says, remove the bowling ball from the trunk. Just took a little common sense, a little thought, and a shift in perspective, right? A shift in perspective. And that's the way it is for us with prosperity. It can seem like things are impossible. Do you ever do that? Do you ever have a little thing going on with your money or with your opportunities or with relationships or stuff, and it gets huge in your mind, right? This is big. There's no solution. There's no way through this. It's just going to be awful. I'm done. I'm just done. And then if we can begin to shift our perspective and begin to understand things in a new way, begin to understand that truly we are spiritual beings expressing in this human form, and understand that we are always one with Source, then a whole new thing opens up, doesn't it? The problem begins to shrink down to a real size. We have a shift in perspective, and we begin to see things in a whole new way. And so we find that indeed there is a solution, and it can be very simple, just as simple as taking that bowling ball out of the trunk, And when it's about our consciousness and our lives, it is likely, not always, sometimes it's just that easy too. Just remove it. And sometimes we got to work at it, right? But what is it that we're working at? We're not working at picking at the problem, because when we have a shift in perspective, what we realize that what there is to work at is to shift our consciousness. That means to shift our understanding of who we are, to claim our divine identity. That simply means that there's more to us than we see on the surface. It means that from within us, there is that divine source that we come from. We talked about that on the first Sunday in August, that it is, and even Robert Hazen, the scientist, in his book, writes that the Big Bang Theory is basically that out of nothing, and it's not even nothing, it's beyond even our scientists' ability to understand or conceptualize. There was nothing, and then all of a sudden there was something. And that's how this whole material universe got started, and that's from a scientist. Out of nothing, something. And so when we understand that for ourselves and realize that we're part of that, then we start to see that if I can open up to that divine source, that what happens is that I realize that through my thinking, through my mind, through my perceiving, through my visualizing, that I can bring forth from what seems invisible, what is not material, but I can bring it forth into material form. And that's what we're doing as human beings. So we shift our perspective and we begin to cooperate with the spiritual principles of the universe. You know, we accept that they're natural principles, right? We accept that. We accept that there's gravity, so if you throw a ball up, we know that the law of gravity means that it's going to come back down. Unless there's something up there that catches it. That's not going to happen. Okay. That, just messing with you. Okay. That, but we know that it's going to come back down. And just as there are many natural laws, and when we accept that, and so when we start to accept that they're spiritual principles and learn what they are and learn to cooperate with them, then we get results. I want to share with you a story about the laws of nature, or the principles of nature. A little story about a monarch butterfly. A friend of mine from Minnesota, this is, you can see this is Roberto Milagro. Roberto is still in his chrysalis, and you know that the English translation of that is Robert Miracle, right? That a friend of mine in Minnesota has been posting on Facebook for the last couple of weeks. She called him Bob initially, but she has been posting this chrysalis. Somehow she got a monarch chrysalis, and she has been nurturing it along. And every day she's been taking a couple of photographs to show the progress. And this really is Roberto. You can't see too well, but you can begin to see his wings. And Jen day before yesterday, the chrysalis was getting more and more transparent as it was getting closer time for him. And you could completely almost see his wings. And then early yesterday, she posted a photograph of him out of the chrysalis, and he was hanging, you know, with his wings wet. And then the last one, we weren't able to get this off of Facebook, but the one yesterday afternoon that I didn't see till late last night was of her with her hand out, and there he was, and he was flying away, and I'm sure he's maybe in Texas by now. Who knows? He may be. He's on his way to Mexico. It's a miracle, right? And we accept that. We accept how the natural law works. It's the same thing exactly with us when we cooperate with spiritual principle, when we cooperate with spiritual law. It works just as surely as Roberto went through his growth process and went through that process of coming out of his chrysalis, and now he's set free. She set him free, you know, to fly, to fulfill himself. That's exactly the way that it is for us. And we learn to cooperate with that spiritual principle. And we find that we too are fulfilled, that we too have enough. We too find that all is well, and we are on our way, you know, to that fulfillment. And we are on our way in our wonderful spiritual journey. So we know that those spiritual principles are to know that God is our source, to know that we can trust that, to know that because God is our source, that we are worthy human beings, that we are expressions of the divine, that we do have worth, and that we do have value. And that as we affirm that and know that, we know that we have a divine place in life. We have a reason to be here. We're meant to fulfill that, and all that we need is here for us. Everybody brings with them their own abundance. Reverend Dorothy Pearson, who was a Unity minister for many, many, many years, and just actually made her transition out of this earth life just a few months ago, several months ago, maybe half a year ago, I can't remember anymore. But Dorothy loved to tell stories. She had lots of stories, you can imagine. She'd been a minister for a long time. And I remember when I went into ministerial school in the mid-90s, one of our classmates was going to be in school with us, but he and his wife discovered that they were going to have a late-in-life baby. And so they decided to put it off for a year before they entered into school. And I'll never forget what Reverend Dorothy shared with us. She said to them, "Don't worry." She said, yes, you're going to be students, and yes, that means that, in the outer world, you're not going to have a job and have a big paycheck coming in. She said, however, you are abundant. And she said, don't worry about this child. She says, because every child brings into the world with it its own abundance. Never thought of that. Never thought of that. I love that. Every one of us brings into this life our own abundance. Every one of us. And that means, it could mean whatever it means to you. There's lots of ways to understand that. To me, it means that I have within me the capacity I have certain abilities that I'm meant to fulfill, that I have the access to divine ideas and the strength and the ability to fulfill those divine ideas, that none of us comes in bereft, that we have the opportunity, we have the ability to fulfill our lives, that our lives are one with God, and so that all is well. Makes a difference, doesn't it? When you've got that as your baseline, all is well. I've got everything I need to fulfill my life. It's a big shift, isn't it? It makes a difference. Takes us out of that striving and worrying and puts us into that place where we do indeed know that all is well. All is well. And we can unfold our lives just like Roberto's unfolded his wings and fly. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. So we know those spiritual principles, and we're able to cooperate with those. I want to share with you some ideas from Charles Fillmore, who was the co-founder of the Unity Movement. I share a lot about what he writes because he was a wise person. I happen to agree with a lot of what he said. It makes sense, and he had a lot of guts. He was willing to put it on the line and try it, and if it didn't work, he'd try something else. So he was an adventurer in consciousness. So I'll share with you in a minute some things that he wrote in his book, Prosperity. Fillmore he didn't claim that he knew anything new. He claimed that he was just trying to understand the wisdom of the ages that was in every religion and every walk of life and just in wise people in general. He only claimed that he and Myrtle were trying to sort of synthesize it and put it all together in a usable form. And I like that about him. He didn't think he was anybody special. He didn't say he knew some secret thing that nobody else knew. He simply said that he was interested in gathering the wisdom of the ages and trying to put it in a form that people could use. I like that because he didn't have a big ego. He wasn't setting himself up. And I can relate to somebody like that. That can help me. So when he talked about prosperity, he was never meaning it as consumerism. He didn't mean that. He talked about prosperity as being knowing your oneness with God, as knowing that is peace of mind and health of mind and body, that prosperity is quality of living. Prosperity is fulfilling your God-given abilities and being of service. That prosperity is being able to walk into wonderful opportunities that are the place for you, places of fulfillment, so that you can express yourself, express who you are, and be that person that is helping to lift up for the higher good of the world. His vision for prosperity, and you'll see this in that book and other books he wrote, was never for people to go off and sort of hoard goods. In fact, he talked about that as very anti-prosperous. His idea was, he has an incredible vision. His vision is that we are going to, as a human species, that we're going to raise our consciousness and understand our oneness with God to the point where we are able to have a circulation and enough for everybody. Because we will have done away with greed, we will have done away with self-centeredness and fear and and violence, so that we will have a world where truly everyone is able to fulfill their divine potential. That was his vision, and I believe in that. I believe that's true. And how do we do that? By trying to change other people? Nah, I don't think so. By changing ourselves, by living in ourselves, and making our contribution to consciousness in our own lifetime. So I'm going to share with you something that he wrote in his book, Prosperity, that I think is just beautiful. It's a little bit long, but it's worth hearing. He wrote, "Whoever you are and whatever your immediate need, you can demonstrate the law." And he means the spiritual principle of prosperity. "If your thoughts are confused, become still and know. Be still and know that you are one with substance and with the law of its manifestation. Say with conviction, I am strong, immovable, spirit substance." You want to affirm that with me? Okay. I am strong, immovable, spirit substance. All right, let's affirm it again. I am strong, immovable, spirit substance. All right, then he goes on. This will open the door of your mind to an inflow of substance-filled ideas. As they come, use them freely. See, this is our inheritance, is divine ideas. Do not hesitate or doubt that they will bring results. Like Roberto Milagro. They are God's ideas given to you in answer to your prayer and in order to supply your needs. The ideas are substance, intelligence, loving, eager to manifest themselves to meet your needs. God is the source of a mighty stream of substance, and you are a tributary of that stream, a channel of expression. Blessing the substance increases its flow. If your money supply is low or your purse seems empty, take it in your hands and bless it. I'll tell you, it works. I do that. All right. See it filled with the loving substance ready to become manifest. As you prepare your meals, bless the food with the thought of spiritual substance. When you dress, bless your garments and realize that you're being constantly clothed with God's substance. Do not center your thought on yourself, your interests, your gains or losses, but realize the universal nature of substance. You see what he's inviting? A shift in perspective. When we get all locked into, ooh, woe is me, what's happening is we're shutting off the divine ideas. The bowling balls back there, in the trunk, and we're all worried about it because we're sure it's going to cost us something awful, But when we get out of the little bitty self thing and we get into the big idea, oh, I'm a part of universal substance, what happens, right? Opens everything up. Divine ideas are the way that God moves in our lives. Okay. The more conscious you become of the presence of the living substance, the more it will manifest for you, and the richer will be the common good of all. See, every time we're truly in prosperity, it lifts everybody else up because we are raising the consciousness. We are no longer contributing to the anxiety and the fear. We're part of the vibration of love and peace and abundance, and that helps everybody. Do not take anyone's word for it, but try the law for yourself. The other fellow's realization of substance will not guarantee your supply. You must become conscious of it for yourself. Identify yourself with substance until you make it yours. It will change your finances, destroy your fears, stop your worries, and you'll soon begin to rejoice in the ever-present bounty of God. Be still and turn within to the great source. See with the eye of faith that the whole world is filled with substance. See it falling all about you as snowflakes of gold and silver. And affirm with assurance, and this is the affirmation that we use every Sunday when Ron comes here and when he is here, and he plays the bowl for us, and he affirms Jesus Christ raising us to his consciousness. Jesus Christ is now here, raising me to his consciousness of the omnipresent, all-providing God's substance. and my prosperity is assured. Now, that's not a worship of the personality of Jesus Christ. That's talking about the consciousness of Jesus Christ, understanding that oneness with God. And I'll affirm that again and invite you to affirm it with me. And it's affirming our relationship with that master teacher and who knows his oneness with God, and opening to our consciousness, our oneness, our Christ consciousness with God. Jesus Christ is now here, raising me to his consciousness of the omnipresent, all-providing God's substance. That's a mouthful, but you want to do it? Okay, here we go. Jesus Christ is now here, raising me to his consciousness of the omnipresent, all-providing God's substance. And my prosperity is assured. And my prosperity is assured. The affirmations that you're getting in your bulletins this month a lot of them are from Charles Fillmore. And again, Janice found them here in the church. The church had these printed a long time ago. So we're putting them in the bulletin every time. They're wonderful. So I invite you to use them. Prosperity is not a magic trick. It's the blessing your purse isn't a magic trick or your wallet. What it does, though, is it opens us up to divine ideas. It opens us up to the flow of abundance so that we are not closed down, but we're seeing the possibility, and it gives us the courage to take action on those divine ideas. I want to share with you a beautiful story in the Bible, a story about Jesus, which is a beautiful story about abundance. This is the feeding of the 5,000, the loaves and the fishes. The variation of the loaves and the fishes story, there's two different versions of it really, is found more than any other of the miracle stories in the Gospels. It's found in the Gospel. Some variation of the loaves and fishes story is found in the Gospels 6 times. 6 times this story's in there. Interesting, huh? Or a version of it. There's lots of levels of understanding of stories in the Bible. It's not about magic tricks. You can understand it on the outer level and say, who knows? I don't know. Maybe just I don't know where it happened. Or you can understand it on the metaphorical level. What can I learn from it just as a metaphor? And you can understand it on the mystical level. What's it telling me about the transformation of my own consciousness? So you can understand it on all those levels, however you want to. But I want to share this story with you and invite you to hear it from that mystical, metaphysical level and see what it speaks to you about your prosperity and opening to that source. So this is in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 14, starting with verse 13. What had just happened was a very difficult thing, is that John the Baptist had just been killed. And so Jesus was upset by that because John was somebody that he was very connected to. Now when Jesus heard this about John, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. So when things happen, we need to withdraw. We need to talk to God. We need to consider what might this mean to me. We need to reflect on our feelings. And so he did that and take it into prayer and take it into reflection. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the town so they wouldn't leave him alone, right? Because he had work to do. So when he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them, and he cured their sick. There's lesson number 1, is even when we are dealing with something, even when we're upset, that's good. We need to reflect on it. And at the same time, God's always got work for us to do, right? The work that God always has for us to do all the time, 100%, 24/7, is to be a blessing. All the time. Is to be increasing the good wherever we go in whatever way we do it. That doesn't mean running around fixing people. It means to be present in consciousness to the notion and the awareness that God is here, and to let that shine and to come to what we're doing from that place. So he was engaged in his true work. Okay, so then when it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is now late. Send the crowds away so that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves." Because so the disciples say, look, these people are hungry. It's late. There's nothing around. We need to do something practical here. You just need to get rid of them and send them to town so they can go eat, you know? Oftentimes when we have a situation, we want to find an outer way to fix it. Sometimes that's fine. Sometimes it's simple. It depends on our motivation. Sometimes we need to at least come from that place, even when we just have a quick outer solution of how's God present in here, because God's present everywhere. So I'm not coming from a place of lack. I'm not coming from a place of desperation. I'm not coming from a place of, oh, well, whatever. But how can I know that even in practical solutions, which are fine, of course, that God's in there, that somehow the abundance of God is in there? But the disciples didn't always understand things, so their first thing was sort of despair. It's like, oh, there's going to be all these crabby people. Get rid of them. Send them to town. Okay. But Jesus said to the disciples, he said, no. He said, they don't need to go away. You give them something to eat. Well, how about that? They thought he was nuts. They often thought he was nuts. Okay, because he came from that spiritual perspective. And so Jesus is the symbol of the Christ within, and he said, oh no, you've got power. You symbolize the Christ powers, the 12 Christ powers that we talk about in unity. So from that spiritual place, you feed them. So Jesus was inviting them to come up to a higher place, to a greater understanding, to let the spiritual food come forth, to find the spiritual solution. Well, of course, as we often do, they said, well, we don't have much here. That's not what they said. That's not here. Okay. They said, we have nothing here but 5 loaves and 2 fish. You ever done that? There's nothing here. The cupboard is bare. What am I supposed to do here? I don't see the good. I don't see any possibilities. My mind is closed. So he said, well, bring them here. Bring them to me. So that's the thing. When I look around and I think I don't have much, take whatever you have and bring it into the Christ nature. Bring it into your spiritual understanding and see what happens. Now, if we go back to the symbolism of the 2 fish, the metaphysical symbol of the 2 fish and the 5 loaves, 5 usually metaphysically symbolizes the 5 senses. So what it's saying here is all I can see is what's on the surface. All I can see is I just see the material. The 2 fish metaphysically usually symbolize divine ideas. So what it's saying is, okay, I see the material world. I got a couple of divine ideas. I don't know. I don't see how this is going to happen. But when we bring it to the Christ, that gets elevated and we see what's underneath that. We see what's within. So Jesus said, bring him to me. So we're going to see what happens. So then Jesus ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, he looked up to heaven and blessed and broke the loaves. So he put it in that heaven consciousness. He said, this is what I've got. Like Charles Fillmore said, I'm going to bless my purse. I'm going to bless my clothes. I'm going to bless my house. I'm going to bless my relationships. I'm going to bless my opportunities. I'm going to bless my job. I'm going to bless whatever I can. Bless just means to increase. I'm going to see the good in it. And then he broke it open. So that means we break open. We see the depth of it. We see the spirituality that's in there. And so he looked up to heaven, that heaven consciousness. He expanded the good. He broke it open to see what the good was. And then he gave it to the disciples, and the disciples gave it to the crowd. So he put it through the 12 powers, the 12 Christ powers. He put it through the spiritual activity, through spiritual action. And all ate, and they were filled. So that the fulfillment came, the prosperity came, there was enough. And then the disciples took up what was left over of the broken pieces, 12 baskets full. 12 metaphysically is the number of spiritual increase. It's spiritual expansion. It means there's no end to it. So I love this part of the story because it's like everybody was filled. Everybody had taken and eaten because they had delved into the spiritual substance, but that it was not diminished. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke said it this way. He wrote, "This is the miracle that happens every time to those who really love. The more they give, the more they possess." When we give from spiritual source, when we give from substance, we're not diminished, we're actually increased because we get that cycle of giving and receiving, opening up, and it actually expands us when we give from the place of spiritual understanding. It increases our good. There is no end to it. There is no end to our spiritual good. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, and then besides the women and children. I'm like, okay, we'll let that go. All right. Anyway, it was a lot of people, right? Now, some people explain this, and I love this explanation, from taking it, again, back to just the level of human understanding, that maybe what happened in that story, maybe the reality, the factual reality of that story was that, was this. The explanation is that these people were used to living in the desert. They were used to harsh conditions. And do you think that those people were going to come out to a deserted place and not bring food with them? Nah. But however, they would store their food. They would wear robes, and so they would store their food in their sleeves, and that was sort of their little suitcase that they had going on. So that one way of understanding this story in the outer is that what happened when the people were assured that this was not a competition, when they were assured that this was going to be a friendly place, when they were sure that they could sit down in an orderly fashion and that they were loved and cared for, they began to take the food out of their sleeves, and they were willing to share it. I love that. I love that. That's what abundance is about. When we're safe, when we know we're loved, when we are assured that we are relating to each other in divine order, to relating to ourselves, relating to God, then we're willing to take out the good, aren't we? And we're willing to share it. We're willing to bless. So do we want to live on the surface? Only got a few pieces of bread and some fish. Not much. Or do we want to live from the source and lift that up, whatever we've got, lift it to that heaven consciousness and live in abundance? It's our choice. Let's pray. Mother, Father God, today we are so grateful that we have the ability to live from source, and we know you guide us every step of the way, and so it is. Amen.